Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's show. Just wanted to drop in a quick introduction. Have a great conversation coming for you today with Skyler Stevens and Kaelen Gulbranson, two board members this year. And our main topic is the new Spotlight on Innovation Parade Home that will be new in 2026. We also discussed a recent trip that we all took to Washington, D.C., and that provides some context for the Spotlight on Innovation Home, and it's really interesting. But if you want to skip straight to that discussion on the Parade Home, skip forward about 20 minutes. If you're on the audio, and if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, we will have a timestamp in the description so you can skip ahead if you like. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Thanks. Welcome to The Housing Advocate, the podcast of the Southern Utah Home Builders Association. I'm your host, Stacy Young, and today I'm really excited to be joined by Skyler Stevens and Kaelen Gulbranson. Skyler is a construction manager at Sun River Firelight here in St. George, and Kaelen is a partner and president of Cedar Point Homes. And both are board members this year. And today we're going to have a nice in-depth conversation around the new Spotlight on Innovation Parade Home. We announced this initiative briefly at the luncheon, I guess in June, and I think we followed that up with an email out to the membership outlining some of the criteria and process around that. But the parade's a big deal for us, and we felt like it would make sense to take some time to really unpack how we came to land on this initiative, what we were balancing as we made the decision, and what we're trying to achieve as we roll it out. And so, we're going to spend a fair amount of time getting into those details, and we hope the members find it interesting. Before we jump into that, though, real quick, just to highlight to some of our listeners, we are on YouTube now, so if you're getting us on your normal podcast source, that's great. Continue to follow us there and subscribe if you like. But we are on video as well now, and our own Liana Bergeron is doing a great job producing the episode. So just a little housekeeping on that. So, guys, maybe to start with, I'm going to start, Skyler, kind of back into this a little bit with a little trip that we were all just on back to DC. It might seem like an indirect way into the main part of the conversation, but I think it all really ties together. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, good seeing you guys again. Last time we were all together was in DC, which was about a month ago. It was a great honor to be able to go back and represent the Southern Utah Home Builders Association, along with the Utah Home Builders Association at the spring conference in D.C. with all of the National Association of Home Builders. It was a great opportunity to tour the Capitol, see a lot of the sites, the U.S. historical sites, and we also got to meet with a lot of our state and local state officials, state senators, state congressmen, and really get kind of a sneak peek behind the scenes of how the sausage is made in DC. Some of it's pretty, and some of it can be kind of downright dirty. But really, what came from that meeting, and I'm going to take a lot from the National Association of Home Builders. There's some initiatives by the new administration, different ways of pulling it off. Some of it's been successful already. Some of it's wait and see. I think it's depending on your politics, of course, you can look at it various different ways. But I think we are the United States, and President Trump was elected, so I think we got to give him enough runway to at least hopefully see if some of this stuff works. Right now, it does seem a little scary. So I'm going to go through really the main things that came up with that meeting and where I see it going, especially now that we got the big beautiful bill passed. I haven't read the full bill. I think it's thousands of pages long, but I've got a rough idea of where I think a lot of this stuff landed. So I'm gonna take from Buddy Hughes, as the chairman of the NAHB, and he met recently with the West Governors Association in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was one of a panelist on there, great leader in our industry, and he came up with the 5 L's. So the 5 L's that are affecting construction are labor, land, lumber and materials, lending, laws and regulation. So labor is going to be, again, affected multiple ways by the new bill. Job Corps being one. The Job Corps is being pulled out of the federal hands, which, again, it's potentially a bloated program, depending on how you see it. Right now, the per student graduation rate is about $180,000. It's a live on campus program that gives kids in need a lot of skills. So we need those skills. We need those people to graduate from those programs. Is there a better way to do it with the states? Is there a better way to do it locally? We'll see. Right now at the federal level, they're saying there is a better way to do it, and it's not at the federal level. Another big one with labor is obviously immigration. Immigration is challenging because we do need more labor in construction specifically, and many other trades, but construction, we are labor short. Now, what I see happening is there's too much conversation around deportation and not enough conversation around immigration reform. So what we need is to get immigrants from countries and get them through the process and make them legal citizens so they can participate in the U.S. economy. Right now, you have a conversation about mass deportation and conversations around what are we going to do without this cheap labor. That's a tough conversation because you're talking about basically using you're exploiting those workers. And so rather than having that conversation, let's get a legal process that works so that we can have some fair labor practices and actually get these good, hardworking people to work. We also need to address that labor shortage here locally. And, Southern Utah Home Builders is amazing at doing that. And we've talked to the state about doing that. I think this is a good opportunity for us to do more locally. So we'll see how that shakes out. Moving on to land. Land is going to be I'm going to link zoning into this a little bit. There's some zoning reform that we need for sure. I think everybody can agree about zoning reform across the United States. Again, I think this is a better topic for state and local, specifically local. What's happening now is we're able to accomplish a lot on the local level. The problem is if we get too much pushback from the people that live here and they fight zoning too much, then it goes to the state. And when it goes to the state, we don't get a choice. And so we got to be really careful not to push back on growth and zoning too much. And then again, at the federal level will step in and make it even less of an option for us to have a discussion. Once it goes federal, it starts to get out of our hands, and what works in their mind federally doesn't necessarily work locally. But again, they may just come down with a hammer and we have to deal with it. The other part of that is federal lands, and Mike Lee, our great senator from Utah, spoke to us about opening up some federal lands and some BLM land for housing. Get more land. Land is so expensive that we need to do everything we can to open up land. Problem is when you talk about opening up federal land, people think they're going to be building houses in Yosemite National Park. They're going to be building houses in Yellowstone National Park. And that is scary. I'm a big outdoorsman. I love our federal lands. I love the West Coast federal lands. We need to preserve those. But as the bill adapted, they started putting parameters around that. So it was it had to be federal lands that were within 5 miles adjacent to a city. So there are a lot of lands, and especially here in Southern Utah, there's some BLM and federal lands here that, to be frank, it's not beautiful land. It's just flat desert. So let's find a way to access those lands that nobody's using for hiking, nobody's using for recreation, and let's find a way to build some more housing. It does add a little bit to urban sprawl, so we got to be careful there. But we also want to make sure that we get more opportunity for land and bring land costs down because they're so expensive. That was actually, my understanding was Mike Lee's bill that was going to go into the big beautiful bill was actually pulled out. I'm sure it will be brought back up again, but just we need to have a conversation around federal lands. depending on what side of the fence you fall on, just understand the full concept before we just say no to it.
Can I say something just real quick on that? It was interesting in our caucus meeting where we got together with a lot of the associations in our region, listening to the land problems that they have. And Nevada they're in a really precarious spot as far as land goes, because the federal government owns so much of it, and they just don't have control to grow their housing industry. So they're up against some real challenges there that will make its way over here if we're not actively, working with Congress and our federal government to make that happen.
Yep.
Yeah, and Utah's pretty similar. We've got a ton of federal land here. So I think there's some ways that we can have a conversation around preserving nature, but getting more product on the market, because really that's what it is. It's a supply and demand. So the more housing we can get out there, the price will come down, and we can hopefully overcome some of these attainability issues. So the next one they are obviously watching very closely is lumber and materials. Materials have been challenging for really since the pandemic. There's been a lot of shortages, which has created a ton of costs. Materials, historically, once they go up, they don't come down. Lumber is the one that fluctuates the most, but now we're seeing tariffs. And tariffs right now are scary. We'll see how they shake out. I do think there's a lot of bargaining that's being done with the tariffs, but as of right now, it's adding costs. Even the threat of tariffs are adding costs. So just as of yesterday, they put a 50% tariff on copper. That's going to affect us. A lot of our AC equipment has got copper in the coils and the condensers. Our electrical is all copper wire. So we're going to see an immediate increase in copper. Again, I hope the administration knows what they're doing with this. We'll see.
There's a strategy behind it all.
I hope there's a strategy behind it. Yep.
Hopefully we don't see a corresponding increase in copper theft as well.
Yeah, we definitely could. We definitely could. Yep, for sure. So the next one is going to be lending. Right now, the Fed chairman, the head of Fed, and Trump seem to be butting heads a lot. We'll see how that shakes out. There could be a replacement. I think in May is what I'm hearing is when that's potentially a replacement. We'll see. From our standpoint, I would tend to agree with the administration. The economy seems to be getting stronger by the day. Unemployment is going down. The opening of U.S. jobs is going up. Inflation is settling down. All signs are pointing to it's time to lower interest rates. My gut is that I see over the next 4 months, the next 2 Fed meetings, I think we'll see a little bit of decrease, which is going to add a little bit of fire to the economy. It's going to open up some housing, start making more demand, which is good and bad. In a way it's bad because are we prepared for that surge? Hopefully it's challenging, but I do think that's what's coming. And so we'll see what happens with that on a national level, whether that Fed starts coming down or not. The next one's going to be laws and regulation. Again, zoning could be linked into this a little bit. It's kind of land and laws and regulation. But I'm going to specifically talk about a couple key issues, one of which is extremely important and just kind of gets to the point of we don't want too much overreach because, again, locally we do things differently here than they do in Boston, Massachusetts. There's a completely different climate, different building environment, you name it. So we need more local control. And so what happened recently was that HUD and USDA was going to mandate to get one of those loans, which generally serves under a little lower income, unrepresented type folks, to get into a home. They were going to require them to bring up to the 2021 Energy Code. Now, the 2021 Energy Code overstepped a lot. Is it amazing technology? Yes. Is it make a house very comfortable? Does it lower energy rates? Yes, it does all that stuff. The problem is that they're estimating it's going to add about $31,000 to the cost of an average house. So the one article, I don't have that information in front of me, but the one article I read basically said that the interest on that $31,000 is almost double the amount of savings that they get from an energy. So it makes no fiscal sense whatsoever for the homeowner. So not only do you have a lower economic status that's probably already strapped, they barely can make ends meet anyway, and then you're going to make them pay more in interest than they save on the energy bills. So under the new administration, this was under the last administration, this was a guarantee. This was going to happen. The new administration, there's a 6-month pause on it right now. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around what were we trying to accomplish, and does it really accomplish what we need to accomplish? Because the payouts were 90 years on a lot of this technology. It just takes a very, very long time to get it back. And then again, with the current interest rates, there's no way it pencils. What was even more shocking about this was that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were going to require the same thing. Now, they write about 72% of the loans across the nation. So again, you are going to take an attainability issue and make it an impossible issue. Nobody will qualify for these loans because it's just too expensive. So that was a big one that I think is a win for the current administration. We really got to watch that closely.
Our delegation on that across the board, our representatives and the senators, I think, are really have our back on that one for sure. So
they definitely do.
I've been really impressed by them.
And you know what I like about the current way that building codes are done and the current way energy codes are done is it's not mandated at the federal level. It comes back to the state. And I'll flat out say I love living in Utah and I love building in Utah because we take a common sense approach to it. There's many things that get pulled out of the IRC, the International Residential Building Code. We pull it out because it makes no sense for our environment. It makes no sense for certain things in this area, and so we pull it out, and it does save money and it saves time. So they've done the same thing with the energy code. Utah has pulled a lot of the stuff that doesn't make sense for our climate out of that code, and so we can build more affordably and still have a very healthy, efficient home. Matter of fact, our homes right now are about 30 to 40%. Just if you're at the 2012 energy code, we're about 30 to 40% more efficient than a standard, than an existing home, an average existing home. So we're already very, very efficient. We've grabbed that low-hanging fruit. Like, to go to that next level is where we get expense that we just can't. It's too hard to pass it on to some of these homeowners. They can't qualify anyway, and then add another potentially $30,000. Just, it doesn't work. And
the additional regulation that goes along with it too.
Absolutely.
That's really hard to put a price tag on,
Yep.
but it exists.
Yep. And I'll kind of close our discussion. Again, we wanted to provide a little bit of context around why we think this innovation parade spot is so important, because these issues will adapt and these issues will change. Today it's land, it's zoning, it's affordability, it's attainability. A lot of times in Southern Utah, it's water. We got to be very worried about water. Who knows what it's going to be like in 5 years from now. So we'll talk a little bit about why we left it a little open and creative. But the last thing I want to talk about, and this is a big one that everybody talked about, was that nationwide natural gas ban. And there are a few cities and states that have adopted this. In my opinion, right now, we need all hands on deck approach to everything in construction. We can't limit ourselves to anything. We need to put in the infrastructure for gas. There's currently processes that we can do ag gas that will basically take methane off of landfills. It'll take methane off of old food and allow it to be natural gas, and we can run it right through that same infrastructure. So to me, we need to not limit ourselves. Let's use what works right now. Hope that there's new technology coming in the future that will eventually get more affordable, and we'll pivot then. But right now, we need everything we can. So I'm glad to see that the administration is really, really stepping hard on the no gas ban across the nation.
Yeah, no, it's great. That's great. That's great background, and it does tie into the topic, the main topic today in a few ways. One is, like you guys were getting at, we have really good federal representation in terms of housing policy that is really helpful. The other piece of this is our affiliation with the state and national home builder association. So, it was cool to see such a strong delegation from Utah generally, and a really good group of us from Southern Utah. And that's virtually all of our dues go to sort of lobbying and policy and education work at the state and federal with the state and national associations. That they, so we have a bunch of allies that are dealing with this stuff daily, and it was also interesting to sit in on some of those sessions as well, and the different National Association working groups, and one that you and I went to, Skyler, really underlined part of your point about just how radically different construction is across the country. We had one guy that was talking about, I think he was somewhere in the South, and how they really don't even have inspections per se, and that was sort of one end of the extreme, and the other, and the guy was saying they were fine with the energy code because in Oregon they have to build to that standard anyway. So your point, having some variability across the country is a good thing, and for us, I think being in Utah is a really good thing. So I think that that's such a big part of what home building associations are about, is the policy work. Typically, that's how they form to begin with, and that was a story here in St. George. Was with Southern Utah Home Builders Association was, individual builders were running up against the same kinds of issues, and trying to handle them individually was not as effective as banding together. So that's how associations, including our own, initially formed. And it was shortly after that we had our first parade home. I think 1991 was the first, SUHBA's first parade of homes. I think the tickets were sold from the Smith's parking lot on the boulevard. Murray tells me it rained that year as well. So some things have changed drastically, and some things don't change at all, right? But you think about where we've come from as a local HBA, and it's really a remarkable testament to a lot of work and engagement across a couple of generations now of folks. And one of the pillars of that has been the parade, that went from those humble beginnings to one of the most successful parades in the country, and is a pillar in what makes us one of the stronger home builders associations, locals in the nation. I wanted to look this up. We're about the 220th largest metro in the country. We are one of the top 20 home builders associations in the country by membership, and so that's just incredible that that the strength of our association, and that provides so many advantages to us. One is what we were just talking about. We have a seat at the table, and we are much more engaged with our state and national associations. But locally, it also allows us to do things that other local associations generally are not capable of. Because our dues because of the success of the parade, our dues don't have to support the day-to-day operations in the same way. So we're able to do things like, continuing ed is free for members, for example. The monthly memberships are free. There's a bunch of those sorts of benefits that go into it. We have the ability to have a really focused effort on local policy and government affairs in a way that other local associations can't really do. And so the parade is super important in terms of our overall mission. And so, it's an interesting platform for us, because we as it's evolved, we need to make sure that it's preserved and improved, but not recklessly, right? But at the same time, it is kind of our best platform for extending our mission in other ways. So, for example, we carve off a few dollars of every ticket that goes into our education fund. We do the same for affordability initiatives, and so this new parade slot evolved out of some of those issues. Maybe I'll keep going just a little bit longer, and then hand it off to Kaelen. I think part of how this evolved was, and Skyler, especially you're president, you're really active in a lot of the meetings that we have on the government affairs side of life, and as our market generally has grown and become a little more affluent, the parade has kind of followed that same trend line. And so there's been increasing chatter, including from folks in positions of authority, that have started to become critical about the parade being only super high-end homes, that's all it's about. And some people have been pretty pointed in terms of saying that erodes our credibility when we try to talk about other issues like attainability and other policy matters, water, et cetera. And so, that was just something we kind of noted over time. We would respond to those comments and point out that, it's a home show. We compare it to a car show. You don't go to a car show to look at a Corolla. You want to see the cool stuff, and that's what the parade really is. It's meant to really showcase the best work. That's was kind of the original idea behind it, was to really show off just how amazing the craftsmanship is, the creativity, and along with the local businesses that come together to make those things happen. And so we're not ashamed of it, far from it. We're super proud of the parade as it is. The parade homes are amazing, and people love it, and so we're very proud of it. But it did feel like we were a little bit more on the defensive than we wanted to be, and having a conversation that we felt like we could maybe take in a different direction. And so we thought about this for a while, and then this year Mari and I brought it to the board for consideration of this topic. Is there a way to bring in some of our policy work into the parade and merge those two pillars of what we do in a way that would be really careful and intentional with what we've built with the parade, but can maybe extend our mission on some of these other directions. So maybe teeing it up from there, Kaelen, could you kind of tell me your perspective in terms of how you first kind of heard that, and how you began to process, and how you saw us wrestle with that as a board?
We definitely had some lively conversation as a board on which direction to go with this and how to implement it. As you know, like the parade is a big deal for us as builders, and it's the biggest parade in the state, and probably one of the bigger ones nationally as well. So as far as attendance goes, so we didn't want to water that down at all, right? I mean, we have a limited amount of homes, and we wanted to keep it kind of exclusive so that we could still have the best product in there, and we wouldn't have just anybody throwing a home into the parade of homes and watering that down, so it could stay, a top parade. So that was a lot of the discussion, is like, how do we do this? How do we showcase that we're a good community partner, and show how we can be innovative and help solve some of those issues that we face as in the industry, as builders and as other stakeholders as well, like your community, your local government, community, your neighbors. Like, we want to make sure that we have all of their interests in mind too. So that was the struggle we were facing, is how do we still showcase this and not water it down. And so one of the important things I think we did is we went to our mission statement, which states that one of our missions in SUHBA is to bridge the gap between the building industry and local government.
Yep. So
we kind of use that as a guiding force.
Yep. 100%.
in making this decision and opening this spot up. We stuck with that, and we just wanted to show that our homes aren't just beautiful homes. We have some of the best builders, I think, in the nation. I'd put our builders up to anybody in around the nation. But it's not. We wanted to get away from just making it a beautiful home, but a statement on where the industry is going, while we're still addressing some of those issues that they're always changing, right? Like Skyler was saying earlier, last year it was water, or this year it's affordability. We talk about urban infill and zoning. So there's always these different issues that we're facing, and we wanted to make that spot available to a builder that can showcase how they're solving those problems. So that's kind of the reasoning behind it and our philosophy behind opening this spot up is that we could show that we are that community member that cares about the community and cares about the real problems that the industry and all stakeholders are facing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well said. I think you really helped unlock some of that, and I think it really did make sense, because I think one of the things we went back and forth about quite a lot was, how narrowly do you define this? And I think by tying it to the mission, and then that leads you into a little bit more interesting and broader conversation around sort of the stuff that Skyler was talking about that is a little more expansive, can cross boundaries that may affect any of the 5 Ls, for example, those inputs to the construction process. But it did take quite a bit of time to calibrate, and I think what we ultimately landed on was this needed to have its own lane created, so as to preserve the core of the parade. We wanted to leave that completely untouched. So we didn't change the number in terms of that. We didn't change the process in terms of that. This ends up being a different process. Skyler, maybe to kind of, there may be some listeners that aren't really aware of how we award parade slots today and how that has or hasn't evolved a little bit over time. Could you give us a little bit of that background?
Yeah, so it's an interesting, and Kaelen hit it on a little bit. There's kind of 2 approaches to opening up a parade spot. You can open up as many as you want and have as many parade builders as you want, which there is some consideration that way, because we do have a lot of associate members that like to vendor in our garages during the parade. Brings a lot of marketing to their company. So we always got to have that in the back of our mind, is how do we help our associate members, and then how do we have this group of builders that we also factor into there. And
we're even a growing market, so even factoring, balancing that up a little bit.
Exactly. So we've adapted over the years to accommodate the growing market. I think we're probably still a little competitive. Mm-hmm. I'm an advocate for keeping it competitive. Yep. I really like the competitive nature of it, because I do think it brings not only the best builders to the top, it brings the best products to the top, and then I like this added spot of innovation, because it allows the builders and the members to get even more creative. So we left it fairly open for that reason, that, hey, come in, show us your ideas. These are the challenges we're facing right now. How do you think you can address that? So I love the fact that we've kept our core criteria established, and I'll get into that, how that goes here in just a minute. But I also like this other position that allows some creativity. Mm-hmm. So yeah, most of the builders are fairly aware of the criteria to get parade points and how we qualify for those first 22 spots, 30 spots total. Yeah, so the first 22 spots are on points only. Now, you get points by being a longtime SUHBA member. I have the very nice privilege of being a member since '98 as part of Sun River Construction. So a little bit of that process is grandfathered in. If you've been here for a very long time, there's certain points, being on the board of directors, being past president, being part of the state board, attending certain committee meetings. Those are all points. And being a spike member, all that stuff comes with time. Yep. And Kaelen, I'll kick it back to you here in a little while, because I really do want to hear that. It's been so long since we started the process, and it was very different in '98. Pretty much, you signed up, you got a parade spot. I'd like to hear it from a newer builder that's struggled through that process, because my gut is it takes 2, 3, 4 years to actually get into the parade point. So there's that whole side of it, and then you also get parade points for volunteering during SUHBA for Service Day, so volunteering some nonprofits, by attending events, so the golf event, the Big Shots event, the bowling event. Those are all parade points. So
and they're all fundraisers as well.
Fundraising as well. Yep, exactly. So it goes to various causes, whether that's scholarships or, again, like Stacy was saying, the attainability that we're working towards, helping around that a little bit. So then you can also get, volunteering to the PAC, donating to the PAC, you get points. I know I'm missing a lot there. There's some more in there.
working with other people that aren't members and trying to recruit them into the association.
Yep, a big part of that is recruiting and retaining. So again, I have a leg up against the new builders because we've recruited a lot of associate members and even some builder members as well that re-sign up every year. So I get points as they stay signed up. Bringing new members in, I get points. Another big one is continuing education. So we also get points for going to continue education and attending the International Builders Show that happens every year. We get points for that. So it's a year-long process. There's not a week that goes by that I'm not thinking about SUHBA and SUHBA points. Even though we're very established, I still have to stay competitive because it is getting very competitive to get a parade spot, which I think, in my opinion, that is kind of SUHBA's secret sauce.
Yeah, it's a great thing.
It's the reason why we're top 20. I think at even one point we're the 12th largest home builders association in the nation, and that's really impressive given our market size. I mean, we're still a pretty small community, yet we're that strong. It's because we are constantly bringing people in, and it's the more you get involved in SUHBA, the more benefits you get, and the more you realize how important it is. And I've said this a million times to Stacy, and how appreciative we are to have you as part of the SUHBA mission, because most home builders associations can't afford to have an attorney on staff that really does drive our government affairs process. We would be lost without you. The relationships you are able to foster with our local cities and our state and even at the federal level, and I know you're also on the Colorado River Authority. You're a big component of that as well. So you're fighting water, you're fighting impact fees, you're fighting all this stuff for us behind the scenes that, quite frankly, us as volunteers don't have the time to do.
It doesn't work. Yeah, you
so
can't do it volunteer. Yes,
you really can't do it. You just can't dedicate enough time to it. So the only reason we can do that is with our strong membership. And again, our strong membership is tied to the parade. Our parade is very successful because of our associate members, our builder members, and then we're also successful the rest of the year because of our parade. And so they go hand in hand. And again, we got to be very careful not to dilute the process, but also we got to give opportunity. And so I think that's what this parade spot's really opened up.
No, yeah, I think, that's really well said. I think, it has really created kind of that virtuous cycle where the two lanes are really complementary, and it makes for much stronger and healthier association. And then, the parade has evolved, especially when you think back to those early 90s. I think in the early days, I'm not sure if you even had to have all of the landscaping in and so forth. And so just the level has just gone up every year, and we make refinements, some smaller, some larger all the time, just always trying to be on the cutting edge of what we do there. And so in some ways it's natural for us to innovate as an association, but it is always a little bit of a scary thing. I think it's different in some ways, but you think about the student home, we found a space for that because that helps advance our education mission. That's a huge plank for us. Like you touched on, labor is part of the lifeblood of our industry, and what gets a kid more excited about building homes than having a home in the Southern Utah Home Builders Parade of Homes? I mean, it's just, they get really excited about it, and it creates that enthusiasm for the business, and so we kind of looked at this in a different but similar way in terms of we've got this other set of goals in our mission that we can maybe advance in this other way. So maybe I'll get into the specific process and criteria around this new slot. Again, it's its own lane. The standard parade process will run its normal timetable, and then this will follow on the back end of it. And so it's a competitive process. Anyone that wants to get in the parade, I wouldn't encourage builders to look at this as kind of a side door into the parade. This is its own animal, and it's so it's kind of, I think, got to be taken on that way if you're interested in it.
It's certainly not a workaround. It's going to require some real thought and energy going into it.
Exactly. And in fact, yeah, and we'll get, I guess maybe I'll just delay what I was about to say. We'll get into what I was going to say here in just a minute. So at the tail end of that, there will be a process that is, so you'll turn in a proposal, and it's not terribly elaborate, but we do have a few sort of minimum requirements to it that describes what the project is, and talks through the timeline. And that application deadline is September 30th of this year. I would also note we're going to have an information session for any builders that are interested in the program on August 14th. So you can come to that as well and get your questions answered and all the rest there. But so on September 30th, those applications will be in. They will be considered by our executive committee. And so what I was just going to say a minute ago is we aren't saying that we are going to award this slot even every year. What we've done is created a lane for it, set up some criteria and a process for it, and then ultimately it will be at the discretion of the executive committee whether any of the applicants meet the intent of what we're really trying to advance with this. But the pillars we identified that we wanted to allow people to compete on were number one, affordability, number two, infill and or adaptive reuse. And so this could be, again, an infill project or a tear down in a sort of brownfield setting, or this does create the scenario where you could do a major remodel. You think about like the Santa Clara Merc that took an old commercial space and turned it into a really cool multi-use structure. It opens up a channel for that. Water and or energy efficiency is the third pillar, land use and zoning responsiveness. And so that's a way for us to maybe showcase and identify impediments around land use and zoning locally. Number five is housing choice. So these could be housing types that are more suitable for multi-generational or non-traditional family arrangements. And then six is missing middle housing solutions. So those would be things like live-work homes, small scale multi-family, et cetera. And so you can see in those six criteria that we've established for the 2027 year that there's quite a bit of overlap. So, a really high scoring project in my mind might check off several of those boxes, but it's not imperative. You really get to decide how you want to put your best foot forward. But those will be the things that are considered, and we will link to this criteria package, a statement of purpose and criteria package, as well as the overall parade point system in the show notes. So if people want to check those out directly, they can do that in the meantime as well. So around that, Kaelen, let's come back a little bit to some of what you were identifying around the way you could kind of see this evolving a little bit from year to year. How do you kind of see some of that playing out potentially?
Yeah, so I think overall, talking to builders that would maybe want to participate in this, we want to see innovative solutions and have a builder showcase those solutions on how they overcome any of those things that you listed. Listen, builders, I always say this, builders are really more problem solvers than builders, right?
Yep.
I think
I see it the same.
Builders are some of the world's best problem solvers because
Very good. Yep.
we do it all day long
Yep.
on site on a micro level. We're solving problems all day. Where to run a water line or where to take an HVAC line or whatever. Right? It's all about solving problems, and builders are phenomenal at solving problems. So we want to showcase this ability to solve problems, and maybe in this, and maybe it's more of a macro problem-solving solution with some of the ones that you listed. But that's what we really want to showcase is our builders' ability to solve problems and to tackle these challenges that the industry is facing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's maybe one distinction that's worth making is all of our parade homes are spotlights on innovation in their own way. I mean, incredible creativity, incredible, and especially when cost is not as much of a limiter, you can really do some amazing, innovative stuff in homes. And so we're going to continue to be really psyched about what we see there. And a lot of those, as you touched on the Skyler, a lot of those leading edge technologies will trickle down into more affordable segments of the market, or you may be able to, as a production builder, figure out how to reverse engineer a 80% solution relative to, that's 50% of the cost of what you're seeing in a parade home, or, to take an example. This is to create another lane of innovation that's around policy issues. So it's a different form of problem solving, different form of innovation, but no less important. We just wanted to create some incentive and really, really showcase any builders that want to roll up their sleeves and tackle this. And I think it does really tie into what you said, Kaelen, at the beginning, where we're tying this into this core mission. One of our core parts of our mission statement is to create a bridge between local government and the building industry. And so, I think this coming year, our first year, one of the ways this kind of happened was a little bit just serendipitous. Another board member, Jordan Wall, and he was on our last episode talking about this a little bit, was the first alternate. And so we knew we had a high certainty that he was going to be in the parade either way. But that, he built my home, which was in an infill setting, and I knew that was something he was interested in. And so it kind of spurred this conversation a little bit that way. It just seemed like, there might be a chance to have this conversation in a little more concrete way with a builder that's prepared to do this in a year one that can kind of maybe hopefully kick us off on the right foot. So he's building a home on an infill lot in downtown St. George's, just a block or two from the university. It's still going to be high design. It's not going to be a cheap home by any means. It's a legitimate parade home. Nothing, about it that's not. But it will have an ADU in back and feature some elements around some of those criteria that we identified that kind of check those boxes. So that'll get us off on hopefully a right foot in 2026, and then we'll see what applicants we get in 2027 for 2027.
And to piggyback off that a little, Stacy, I Jordan obviously was in a position where he was going to get a spot most likely either way. He came to the board with a creative idea. We looked at it and we said, this is exactly the kind of project we're looking for. It is going to be bridging the gap between St. George City and the building community. And really right now, the biggest leap forward that we've made in zoning is the ADU and, some of the setback stuff. And so this is the perfect first project because I know you have a podcast coming with Danielle and Jordan, and they talk a little bit more in depth about this. But it's been interesting to hear the conversations the council has had about ADUs and benefits and parking and all that stuff. And I think this is going to be an amazing house to go tour. Again, innovation and technology, it's not always the most affordable. So the parade again is not tapping into directly to the affordability conversation. But again, it could potentially, as things start to come down, as ideas get creative, maybe us as production builders can take a small portion of that and do it. We can watch the big customs like Kaelen try a few different things, and maybe we can test that out a little bit. It kind of feeds into it, and I think that's how the whole housing process has worked all along. It's been kind of baby steps to get to where we are. So again, I want to highlight two things. I think Jordan is not only perfect because of the product, because of the location, he also has a passion.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for. We want people that have a passion to do an innovative home and come to the board and the executive committee with an innovative, creative idea that will help move some of the policy along, depending on what's going on in the world at that time. But that's really what we want. We want someone that's passionate. And I'll emphasize the fact that this spot is not going to be awarded every year, most likely. But if there's creative ideas, then yes, it will be awarded. So don't go into this spot thinking that's your avenue into the parade. I would really encourage you to go through the normal process, accumulate points, get involved with SUHBA, do everything you can to get as many points as possible. If you don't get enough points, go to the silent auction. You have an opportunity. There's 4 spots that go to the silent auction, so try for those spots. If you don't get in there, there's 4 more spots for the silent bid. So there are opportunities to get into. Also, tying back to our mission, we really do want to see in the application packet, in the presentation, how are you going to bridge the gap between builders, developers, and cities? Even at the state, let's find ways to make policy around this home. That's really what it's about, is to find a better way of better way to build homes, a more efficient way to build homes, stuff that creates a better community. That's what we're looking for.
I think we're aiming to try to have a home that inspires others to rethink how things are currently done, right?
Yeah.
And it could be whatever stakeholder, but whether it's the community or other builders, we want to showcase how they can rethink how things can be done.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll underline the part about all stakeholders. I think the ADUs are a really good example. What you see pretty much anywhere that you see that ADUs get adopted and start to be built in a place is there's initial resistance, and the tendency is for cities to really clamp down on. They'll allow them, but they'll put a ton of restrictions on them so they don't get very many built. And eventually they loosen them up a little bit and they start to see more built. And after, usually it's around 5 or 10 years, people start to really like them. Like, oh, this didn't ruin the neighborhood, A. Oh, and you know what? I have a parent that's aging that I'd like to keep close, or I have an adult child that I'd like to keep close, but not like under my exact same roof. Get him out of his bedroom, get him kind of a bridge to independence, and other people can see it as an additional income source, et cetera. So it starts to expand the potential for people, and they get more accepting of it, whether it's the neighbor, whether it's the city council member, planning commissioner, staff person, or the builder. Mm-hmm. Once you see it in action, you get really comfortable with it. And so I think that's exactly right.
And that's what I love about it being in the Parade of Homes, is that you put that downtown neighborhood, you're going to see a few streets that get to look at that product, and that's really neat. Well, the parade immediately brings 45,000 people to that home, potentially. And so it just highlights it really, really quick. And so to your point, people are so afraid of the unknown that they're not willing to step out there unless they can see it, tour around it.
And it'll I think a successful project will model scalability too. So other people maybe don't have that fear to take a leap and do something innovative and creative, and maybe think outside the box. It models that to be done elsewhere.
Yeah, and we haven't fleshed out all the details of this, but we've talked a little bit with Jordan, and the thought is that possibly some of his garage space, if not all of it, maybe it ends up being more sort of demonstration stuff and educational materials around the policy that he's going to be able to. St. George has come a long way in a relatively short amount of time on their ADU policy, and from the conversation we had with Danielle, I think they're going to take another nice step forward. But this allows us to talk about what made this possible from a regulatory standpoint. So we can kind of talk through here are the typical impediments that prevent this, and maybe some ways that we could even take this and make it even better. Mm-hmm. So it's really hopefully going to spur a really interesting 360 conversation within all the stakeholder. Yeah,
I'd love to hear the story on how the collaboration process happened. Right, like. I was counting up stakeholders from the owner to the lender to the builder to the community and everybody in between. Like I came up with in just a few minutes a 35 person list, and that doesn't include all of the subs and trades and everything that are involved. So it's a massive collaboration experience that needs to happen. So I'd love to hear that story of like, hey, how did you get everybody on the same page?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great note. Yeah, we should definitely highlight that with him. I don't know if there's any other things you guys would like to touch on. I can talk this stuff all day. I think one thing I would maybe come back and underline a little bit that you said, Skyler, is, and this is part of what drew us into this thought process, was the parade is an amazing platform, and we want to be very respectful and careful with it, but it is also our best opportunity to put a foot forward and really demonstrate what we're about and what we can do as builders, and to demonstrate that we can solve problems of a whole variety that today we're in some ways not being permitted to tackle. So yeah, I think all pretty exciting. I hope our membership also understands the spirit in which we tried to adopt this. Hope they feel the thoughtfulness that went into it, and but certainly we're open to feedback and always looking to improve. So we'll certainly take feedback as we get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I mean, it's gonna. We always, like you mentioned earlier on, we always have the pushback from local government. Like, what are you guys doing to solve these real problems that we're facing? And they are problems, and they've got a point to a big degree. And so how do we get away from just showcasing the biggest and the grandest? I mean, everybody wants to do that, and there's a place for it. But I'm excited to see that we can show that as SUHBA we care about the problems too, and we're an integral part in solving those problems and taking those challenges right on.
No, 100%, and we try to point that out, that the top selling projects are selling more in a month than the whole parade has, right? We are an all of the above organization when it comes to housing. We want everyone to have a home that suits them, that allows them to live a healthy and dignified life in whatever fashion they can. So
yeah, that's what I love, is not only do we get to keep the parade the way it is, we get to showcase the builders, we get to showcase our associate members, just how amazing we are here in Southern Utah. But maybe we can do both. Maybe we can showcase that and find new innovative ways to overcome some of these challenges that we face as a nation, really. And I think we can do it a lot better here at the local level. I would, just in closing a little bit, I just encourage all of our builders and associate members to get more involved with the process of SUHBA. I really want to see some of the creativity around this innovative parade position. So, start the creative juices flowing. Let's get people talking about this. Let's figure out ways that we can attack zoning, we can attack water, we can attack attainability. Again, Jordan's project with that ADU, it gets at attainability a little bit. You can offset some of those costs with that ADU. And again, it's some of that downtown walkability. There's so many things around that gets out of this a little bit. Does it address it all fully? No. So there's ways to get creative. But yeah, please get involved with SUHBA. Get on committees. Look at becoming a board member. There's so many opportunities to get involved, and the more you get involved, the more you understand how important it is that we have a strong membership. So yeah,
I'll echo that. In my experience, we started our company in 2016, and we kind of just floated along as members and didn't really get involved. And and that was probably one of the biggest business decision mistakes we've made. As soon as we got serious, and I'll be honest, it was because of the parade. We wanted to be participants in the parade, but there's a reason for the point system. It's because as soon as we got serious and involved, that changed the game for us as builders. So I'll echo that. Get involved, do all that you can, because it's going to help the association, and probably more than that, it'll help your own business.
Yep. Helps the whole community.
No, really well said. It really stitches you into the community. And I think to extend that one more step, I think there's so many great resources. And so even around this, if you're interested in it, talk to any of us. There's a lot of great willingness to just bat ideas around and collaborate. It's a really healthy competition here where there's a niche for everybody to thrive in, and so there's a lot more cooperative spirit than you might think, and you will generally get more out of it than you even put into it. So
for sure.
Great words to end on. Yeah, and just want to thank you guys for your leadership generally, and in particular on the process of crafting this. It was a tricky thing, but I think we landed in a good spot, and we couldn't have done it without the efforts of you guys and others that really have been willing to take it on. So again, thanks again also for coming in today. The podcast, in this industry, we're never super comfortable in front of microphones. I'm certainly not, but I appreciate you guys.
I've been told I have a radio face, so I'm not sure about the camera.
I'm probably ham radio face. I've got to do the further away than that. But anyway, thanks again, guys, and thanks to our audience for tuning in. We hope you'll subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy.